Hey, what's up, Tandem? Matt here from Lake Shawnee, hitting you with your weekly message. Just got out here. It's a beautiful day. And I was kind of thinking about it on my way out here, what to talk about. And I had the perfect experience happen to me this morning, which probably a lot of you guys identify with. You see, I have this problem sometimes where I put things in places and forget where I put them. So for example, this morning I was getting ready to leave my house, and I, for whatever reason, could not find my car keys. So there I was, keyless, needing to leave, needing to go and record this video. And I said, Jessica, what did you do with my keys? I could have sworn that I put them on the key tree where they go, and they just weren't there. So I asked her, I made her drop what she was doing. She was playing with our kids, doing some coloring with them, made her stop and made her help me look for my keys. Wouldn't you know, about 2 minutes later, I found the keys in my jacket pocket where I left them. And would you believe it? I messed up. You see, I was so focused on me and myself and what I needed and wanted that I inconvenienced somebody else. And I have a feeling that I'm not the only person that has ever done that in their life, is to be so focused on me that I missed out on the bigger picture. So we're gonna walk around Ted Inslee Gardens this morning and talk a little bit about moving beyond just ourselves. Let's get it. So moving beyond ourselves, that is so important to the life that Jesus calls us to live as Christians. Like, what would happen? What would it look like if I took my eyes off of my phone screen, or I took my eyes off of myself, or off of my social media posts, or off of whatever it is that distracts me, and instead I turned my eyes to somebody else? How would my life be different if I stopped looking at my needs, like when I lost my keys this morning, and I began to look at others' needs and how I could help them see the love of Christ through my actions? You know, specifically, I think about the people that you interact with every single day. There are people that in your life that seem they have it all together. You have friends that have the perfect families, or classmates that get straight A's, or people in your neighborhood, or your brother, your sister maybe, that seem to have it all together. But I promise you, these people that have the perfect put together lives with very few issues, they're not perfect. I promise you, there are some of these people that seem to have everything figured out, and yet there is something tearing them up on the inside. Because people have struggles. Everyone does. You, me, literally everyone has something going on. Maybe they just found out that their mom or dad was diagnosed with cancer. Maybe she just found out that she's failing all of her classes. Maybe his grandma just died. Maybe she just found out that she was pregnant. There's stuff going on in everyone's life, and it's up to us to stop looking at ourselves and move beyond the distraction to look into others. And that's something that Jesus talked about a lot. It's something that he practiced a lot. In fact, we're going to look at Mark 6:30 today as we begin to get into our Bible story. So if you have a Bible, open up to Mark 6:30. But as we get into that, a little backstory leading up to that, Jesus took his disciples and he said, hey, you need to go on a mission trip. Go wherever God leads you, stay with whoever will keep you, and then continue on your way. So after a while, we don't know how long, his disciples left, and then they came back. And this is where we picked up our story right as they're coming back from their mission trip. I can imagine they're tired. If you've joined us on our Arlington trips, you know a little bit of what it looks like to be tired after laboring for Christ. And so they're tired, and here's where we pick it up. It says, the apostles returned to Jesus from their ministry tour and told him all they had done. Then Jesus said, let's go off by ourselves to a quiet place and rest. He said this because there were so many people coming and going that Jesus and his apostles didn't even have time to eat. So they left by boat for a quiet place where they could be alone. Now, me personally, when I get back from a conference or camp or mission trip, I really need a day or two to myself. I need some time to relax and sleep and do whatever it is that I want to do. But when I come home, my wife needs me. She's exhausted from having the kids by herself. The kids have missed me. They want some dad time so desperately. And so I have to figure out, how do I attend to my needs, but also how do I be a good husband and a good father to my family? And this is a tension Jesus deals with too, right? Him and his disciples, they're leaving on a boat. It says, we pick it up, verse 33, it says, but so many people recognized them and saw them leaving, and people from many towns ran ahead along the shore and got there ahead of them. Jesus saw the huge crowd as he stepped up from the boat, and he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So he began teaching them many things. So Jesus and the boys tried to leave to have some alone time, some quiet time, some time to rest, but it just didn't work out because he was such a good teacher that people followed him. They followed him to the next place and the next place and just waited until he came ashore. It would have been easy for God to blow them off. It would have been easy for Jesus to walk by them and ignore them. Probably would have been easy for Jesus to just stay on his boat and take a nap. But see, that's not who Jesus is, right? Me, sometimes I blow my wife off when I get back from a conference or camp and my kids. Think about the self-absorbed I was this morning needing my keys. That's who I am. But Jesus is not that way. Jesus never has a me first mentality. Jesus always says others first. And this is something that Paul talks about in the book of Philippians, chapter 2. It's called the kenosis passage. It's one of the most powerful texts in the entire New Testament. It talks about who Jesus is. So read along with me here. It says, don't be selfish. Don't try to impress others. Be humble, thinking of others better than yourself. Don't look out only for your own interests, but take an interest in others too. Have the same attitude that Jesus Christ had. Though he was God, he did not think of equality with God as something to cling to. Instead, he gave up his divine privileges and took the humble position of a slave and was born as a human being. When he appeared in human form, he humbled himself in obedience to God and died a criminal's death on a cross. Let's look at that last line again. He died a criminal's death, even a death on a cross. And this is the perfect time for that reminder. Easter was 3 days ago, the day we celebrate Jesus' death and resurrection and saving our sins, right? But it's not just a reminder of what Jesus did, but also a task to go along with it. The task that tells us to look up from ourselves, to look past our screen, to ignore the distractions in our life, and to look to others first, just as Christ did. Speaking of looking up from our screens, that thing that's on the top of your phone that takes pictures that everybody has? The selfie camera? Do you know why that was invented? That was invented for video conferencing. It was invented for corporations to have face-to-face conversations when you couldn't do that. And until about 3 weeks ago, with the quarantine and the coronavirus stuff, pretty much the only thing we used these selfie cameras for was, of course, selfies. TikToks, Snapchats, videos, Instagram, all of these things. And let's be honest, they weren't even real. We'd have to make up some kind of content to take with our selfie camera rather than just real life things. And that's not what God calls us to do. See, so now all of a sudden we can use this reminder of Easter and this reminder of Jesus' death, and even possibly the reminder of every time we open up to take a selfie, to think about Philippians 2:3. It says to humble yourself just as Christ humbled himself, to think of others as better than you. It's a great opportunity for us to remember the goodness of Jesus every time we take a selfie. All right, Tandem, let's get real for a moment. We've spent the last little while talking about this others first mentality that Jesus had, and even looked at an example of Jesus having this mentality. But we haven't talked about why it's important in our everyday lives. See, this is so important because in the world today, we always have an us versus them mentality. You see, if our viewpoints aren't the same, it's very easy for me to get upset or angry or frustrated at you. Maybe you have a different favorite basketball team. Maybe you go to Seaman and I go to Shawnee Heights. Maybe you prefer Chick-fil-A sandwiches and he prefers McDonald's chicken sandwiches, right? There's something for us to always be upset at. And right now, with the coronavirus going on, this is a perfect example, right? There are people on both sides that say the media is completely making this up and blowing it out of proportion. And then there are some people that say this is the world's deadliest virus, and if we don't do something, the world is going to end. And these two people with opposite viewpoints are constantly fighting. In fact, you've probably had some discussions and maybe even some arguments about the coronavirus because of differing viewpoints. This is a huge part of our society. But when we get into fights with people over silly things like that, we will never show them the love of Christ. We will never show them the goodness of who Jesus is through fighting. And that's why this is such a perfect time right now for us to adopt this others first mentality. Another reason this is super important is because the more time we spend on our screens, the easier it is to say, me first, right? The more time we spend scrolling social media and playing games and watching YouTube and watching Netflix and whatever it is, the more time we spend on our screens, the more we become self-focused. And that's not the attitude we want, right? You've probably spent hours thinking about the perfect video to make for TikTok, practicing that dance or that video, coming up with a script in your mind. You've probably deliberated on the perfect caption or perfect phrase to use to add to an Instagram post. Or maybe even you've looked forward or thought about who you could invite over to your house so you could have the perfect Snapchat story with the most views and comments. Right? This is something that we all do. But all of that is self-focused. All of that is me first. Now, there's nothing wrong with doing TikTok dance. There's nothing wrong with posting on Instagram and having awesome Snap stories. I love seeing these things that you guys do. But that's not what it's all about. You see, Jesus looked to others first beyond what he wanted, beyond what possibly he even needed, and ultimately to a death on the cross. And this is the mentality that we're supposed to have. So as we walk out of here, I'm going to leave you with 3 ideas how to have an others first mentality. Let's do it. So as promised, 3 tips as we are headed out of Lake Shawnee. First tip is to look. We've talked about that a few times so far today. This idea that we need to look up or look away or look beyond or look past whatever it is that distracts us, right? And we need to look not just past the distraction, but actually look into other people's lives because they have issues going on too. They have hardships going on too. And if we don't ever look at people, then we're going to completely miss it. Then we need to discover people. That's number 2, just discover people, because God always puts others first. And so we're called to do the same thing. Discovering them says, like, don't just look at them, but also ask them questions about themselves. Get to know them as a person, get to know them as people. It's so important, it's so valuable, and it makes them feel loved. It affirms them as to who God made them to be. And then final, the third one is to do, right? Look for someone, discover them, and then do something for them. As you look at people, as you discover what people's needs are, what's going on in their life, how we can love them well, we get the chance to do something for them. You see, we get the chance to actually be Jesus's hands and feet in their lives and come alongside them with whatever their needs are. A cool thing about these three ideas is they all point to Philippians 2. So if you forget what to do, forget, look, discover, and do, open up your Bibles. Go to Philippians 2 and read that passage again, because that is the perfect example of others first, the same mentality Jesus had. And that's going to wrap up our message for today, guys and gals. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to check in with your parents, because they have some discussion questions we'd love for you to look over, think over, and help you take your next steps in growing deeper with Jesus. That's why we do this. That's what we are wanting to do here. So, with that said, love you guys, miss you guys, and we will see you very soon. Here's the Impala. Till next time, bye.